9. Caught by the coyotes. In Canada's first ever documented fatal attack, a pack of wild coyotes mauled a 19-year-old woman to death. In 2009, Taylor Mitchell, a rising country music singer, had the entire world at her feet when coyotes put an end to her life. The bright young vocalist had just released her debut CD to critical acclaim. Judges nominated her for the Young Performer of the Year at the Canadian Folk Music Awards. She was a nature lover who'd taken a rare day off from her tour to stroll around in the woods in Nova Scotia's Cape Breton Highlands National Park. The same afternoon, 2 coyotes approached an American couple in the vicinity. It startled the couple because it happened in the middle of the road. The duo took a picture of the pack. A few minutes later, the couple heard a young woman screaming amidst the eerie howls of coyotes. They followed the shrill cries of pain and 3 other hikers. They found Mitchell lying defenseless on the ground with a bloody coyote standing over her. It didn't budge when the gang tried to scare the coyote away. Instead, it growled and held its ground till the Royal Canadian Mounted Police arrived and fired a shotgun at it. Devastating bite marks covered Mitchell's head and limbs. Despite the severe blood loss, the woman tried to fight desperately for her life as a helicopter rushed her to the nearest hospital. Sadly, because of the profuse bleeding from several wounds, she died shortly after. What followed Mitchell's brutal death was a string of coyote attacks on humans. As a result, officials issued a warning and advised all visitors to stay clear of Stanley Park in Vancouver. According to evidence found at the site, the coyotes possibly mistook her for a deer. The beasts then dragged her around as she tried to get back to her car. All Mitchell had to defend herself against the killer coyotes was a penknife and her keys. And clearly, that wasn't enough. So, make sure you're better equipped than she was before heading out for a hike into the woods. 8. Honeymoon down the cliff. A judge sentenced a 22-year-old newlywed to 30 years in jail for her heinous crime. She'd shoved her spouse off a scenic cliff in Montana. Jordan Lynn Graham, 22, claimed to have second thoughts before killing her husband only 8 days after their wedding. Cody Johnson, 25, died after falling off the edge of a popular hiking trail in Glacier National Park on July 17, 2013. He died after falling 200 feet, 60 meters. Authorities discovered Johnson's body on July 11, 2013, with an 8-inch long gash on the forehead. Graham indicated that the location was on her husband's bucket list, even though she claimed she had no idea where he'd gone. According to the Missoulian, US District Judge Donald Molloy stated that the Kalispell lady, who continually lied and changed her narrative about what happened, never apologized for the murder and showed no remorse. The federal judge who handed down the punishment, which contains no possibility of parole, stated, "She was a normal human, at least at the moment. However, how would a normal human murder her 8-day husband?" Graham and prosecutors reached an agreement days into her criminal case in December 2013. The young woman confessed to her crime in exchange for a 3-decade sentence. After reading a statement in which prosecutors deemed the homicide premeditated, they recommended a sentence of 50 years to life in prison. Graham got cold feet and wanted a new trial, arguing the agreement was illusory and a hollow formality. Molloy refused her request to change the trial and upheld the conditions of the plea agreement. On March 27, 2013, he sentenced her to 30 years in prison. "I have no explanations for why I didn't make different decisions," Graham told the court. Graham initially told detectives that her new husband had gone out hiking with a bunch of friends. She even wrote an email from her fictitious Tony, claiming Johnson would never return. Investigators quickly saw through her story and discovered she got cold feet shortly after the wedding. Graham finally gave up and told the investigators how she and Johnson fought while walking up the trail. She then shoved him much harder than she had expected. Investigators later found that Graham was very apprehensive and had several reservations concerning her participation in the marital act. 7. Safari gone wrong. In April 2019, 35-year-old Kimberly Sue Endicott was on safari with an elderly Canadian husband and wife and their guide. Suddenly, 4 unidentified armed men in military uniforms attacked them at nightfall. According to authorities, they held the group at gunpoint before taking the keys to their safari vehicle. They left with Endicott and the guide. The guide was a Congolese national named Jean-Paul Murenge Rametso. Queen Elizabeth National Park in southwest Uganda is a famous tourist destination with luxury wilderness camps. Armed rangers occasionally accompany tourists visiting the area to protect them from poachers or wildlife. The kidnappers left the Canadian visitors, Martin and Barbel Jurius, behind. They notified the camp manager, who escorted them back to safety. The kidnappers used one of the victims' cell phones to demand a ransom of $500,000, which investigators believe was the motive of the kidnapping. Authorities commissioned a joint operation involving cops, the military, and wildlife officials to locate and rescue the abducted individuals. According to a company spokeswoman, the kidnapped tourist guide worked for Wild Frontiers Uganda, a group organizing safaris within the East African nation since 1996. After they paid the ransom, the kidnappers released Endicott and the guide unharmed 4 days later. Bashir Hangi, a spokesperson for the Uganda Wildlife Authority, said that the national park spans 760 square miles, 1,223 square kilometers, is home to over 95 mammals and 600 bird species, and is mostly safe. This incident should not deter tourists in any way. In an interview with ABC News, Hangi said, "This is a one-off incident. It's an isolated incident. That's not something that happens daily, and it's not something we're known for. We call it an accident. It's tragic, regrettable, but it happened," said the narrator. 6. Trampled by the beast. In April 22, at Kaziranga National Park, a wild elephant mauled a Dutch visitor to death after he insisted on staying and taking pictures while his friends and guide fled from the charging animal. Robert William Goldback, 55, was trekking with a guide, an armed forest ranger, and 8 others through Assam's Kaziranga's Panbari Reserve Forest, India. The dense jungle is a popular spot with birdwatchers and home to the wild Makhana young male elephant. We got going around 6:30 a.m. The overseas visitors were ecstatic to see a rare Asian paradise flycatcher. At around 9 p.m., we were startled to see a massive elephant only 33 feet, 10 meters away. "I sensed trouble since it was glaring at us," said guide Abdur Rahman. Rahman claimed he alerted everyone to leave the area, but an ecstatic Goldback remained to capture the moment. "As I moved away with the others, the guard, Subhash Senapati, remained with him," Rahman stated. When he was about 30 meters away, he heard gunshots. The elephant charged at them after some had fled, according to Senapati. "I shot 3 rounds into the air, but it continued to charge towards us. I ran away, yelling at the tourists to run as well," he explained. "Then I heard a noise, like an elephant slamming against trees, followed by screams. It was an instant death. When I returned, I discovered the tourist's lifeless body twisted between 2 trees in the creepers." A few days later, a wild elephant killed a 40-year-old tea garden worker, Mina Tengal, 12 miles, 20 kilometers away. Forest officials believe it was the same tusker. 5. Washed away. Flash floods killed another Dutch tourist in a famous cave in Malaysia's mountainous Mulu National Park on Borneo Island. The search for the guide who accompanied the tourist was underway. Local fire and rescue head Lorpo Kiong identified Peters Hans Hovenkamp, 66, of the central Netherlands as the deceased. Officials flew the body to Miri for further investigation. He drowned in the caves as a result of flash floods. His body was discovered in a cave river and transferred to the public hospital in Miri for a post-mortem, news organization AFP reported. 4 days later, a rescue operation involving 68 people led them to a newly discovered 246-foot, 75-meter passageway deep inside the cave. Rescuers found Robiazal Robin, the 20-year-old local tour guide, dead. In July 2019, Hovenkamp was on a tour of the famous Deer Cave, home to at least 3 million bats that produce stunning patterns in the sky as they leave at sunset. 8 more tourists from the same group who nearly became victims survived after fleeing to higher ground. Mulu Park, a World Heritage Site in Sarawak State's remote Borneo jungle, is known for its caves, cliffs, and gorges. It attracts thousands of visitors each year, particularly during the welcoming showers during the summer months. It was a freak catastrophe, Law said, referring to the unfortunate death. 4. Gone with the Wind. 31-year-old Joel Thomason went missing on a solo trek in the Yosemite National Park on September 6, 2021. The United States Army reservist was to return from his hike between Hetch Hetchy to Lake Eleanor on September 9, 2021. Instead, a park ranger spotted him near the steep section of O'Shaughnessy Dam on the first day of Thomason's hike, which investigators believe was the last time anyone saw him. After several months of search operations, authorities presumed Thomason had died on the ill-fated hike. His family organized a memorial service in Turlock on December 4, 2021, and started a GoFundMe page to help his wife and 2-year-old son. Though it's improbable he's alive, explains the GoFundMe page, without verifying his location, Joel is deemed a missing person. In California, getting a death certificate for a missing person can take up to 5 years, so his wife Amanda won't be able to collect on items like Joel's life insurance or Social Security to help bridge the gap. Thomason isn't the only one who vanished into thin air at the sprawling park. The following case is another of Yosemite National Park's several unsolved disappearances. 3. Lost and never found. In August 2000, 49-year-old Ruth Ann Rupert left her home in Florida for Yosemite National Park. She was an accomplished climber who frequently ventured to great heights. One of her favorite stories was about how she ascended Mount Kilimanjaro with a freezing foot. Rupert traveled to Argentine Peak in Colorado to ring in the new year, while others worried about Y2K. For such a seasoned climber, the trek at Yosemite should have been a breeze. Rupert had intended to join a backpacking group that would go 19 miles, 30 kilometers across the park. Instead, she was upset when she woke with an eye infection, forcing her to miss the climb while she had to seek medical attention. Unhappy with the turn of events, she took things into her hands. She went shopping and bought a tent at Curry Village. Rupert seems to have vanished after that. She left her supplies behind at the tent, which is not something a seasoned hiker would ideally overlook. Her family's confident that she'd never abandoned them and that she had no intention of harming herself. Search teams never found Rupert despite a search and rescue mission. Finally, 8 years later, someone discovered Rupert's backpack lodged in a drain in Fireplace Creek, about 5 miles, 8 kilometers away from Curry Village, where she was last seen. How Rupert's backpack ended up there remains a mystery, just like her whereabouts. 2. Into the Canyon. Drake Kramer, a 21-year-old college student, was so passionate about nature and hiking that the skilled outdoorsman majored in geology at the University of Texas. But one particular visit to the Grand Canyon ended the man and his family's dreams. Sadly, a lovely evening with his parents at the movies on January 29th was the last day the family had with him. Speculations grew when Kramer's last message to his mother surfaced. It read, "I need to be back with Mother Earth and set my soul free." So did Kramer hint at a suicide? To unravel this mystery, let's go deeper into what happened. Kramer flew to California and then to the Grand Canyon out of the blue with no preparation. On February 1st, 2015, he landed at the Bright Angel Lodge in Arizona. Although Kramer had been there several times before, he'd never traveled alone. Authorities reported he left his car at a lodge nearby and possibly made it on his own toward the south rim of the Grand Canyon. We agree that the topography of the south rim is quite mixed, making it difficult to navigate. However, it's improbable that nobody would discover any trace of him or his bones. Kramer's body has never been located, nor have there been any indications of what happened to him. His family remains optimistic and denies the possibility of suicide. 1. From Mesa Verde to missing. When he disappeared, Mitchell Dale Sterling was 51 years old, 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, with grayish-brown hair. Sterling was last seen while trekking in the Mesa Verde National Park on June 9, 2013. He traveled with his wife, father, and mother on a road trip. Sterling began hiking at 4:30 p.m. after telling his parents that he wanted to view the Spruce Treehouse. The Petroglyph Point Trail leads to the dwelling, less than a quarter mile, 0.4 kilometers long. Sterling, however, never came back. Authorities discovered human remains in the secluded park region thanks to an anonymous tip. On September 17, 2020, U.S. Park Rangers, an ISP special agent, and Montezuma County Coroner's Office officials discovered and collected the remains. They found Sterling's body and several personal items around 4.2 miles, 6.7 kilometers from where he was last seen. At the end of the 7-year-long investigation, officials found no evidence of foul play. Would you rather be stuck in a national park alone for 3 days, or stuck there with someone you couldn't stand for a week? Let us know in the comments. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more amazing videos. See you again soon.